We are joined in studio by Federal Immigration Minister Marc Miller. Welcome back, I guess, is the fair. Were you here last time or did we talk on the phone?
I think we were on the phone.
Okay. Well,
we were at the deli.
Yeah, we did a podcast as well. I would offer you refreshments. We like to do that with people who come, but we don't have any. I did give you a bag of seeds, though, if you want to have that.
They're lovely.
Thank you. So let's talk about a couple of things in the news. First of all, and I know we were talking just off air, but I want to ask because we've been talking about Mark Carney, about endorsements and all kinds of stuff, and you're the latest to come out and support Mark Carney. I find this interesting, and I think I was saying to you, it seems almost like he's being anointed, by all the other liberals who've been around for a while, Justin Trudeau's, close friends or, people in caucus who've been there for a long time. And I wonder, does it seem like that to you? Or it seems almost like this was planned. The mob would say, he's a made man. He's had every important minister, Francois-Philippe Champagne, Melanie Joly has come out. Now you've come out as well. Does it seem that way to you? Do you get the sense of that or not?
I mean, based on what I'm seeing on my end of things, Aaron, it's organic. The people, some people said they're going to support Mark, and it's been staggered a bit. So there's some rhythm to it. But for example, I just decided over the weekend that I do it, and I didn't know if I was going to tweet something, say, hey, I support Mark. And they said, well, why doesn't he just pop over by your house and you can do some calls and talk about how you endorse him. So I'm endorsing him because I like the guy. I mean, everyone's seen his CV. It's probably unequaled in Canada. He's accomplished a lot, but he's also just a nice guy that you can talk to. And he cares about some of the issues I care about. So I didn't stage it. People are free to believe what they want. And ministers are kind of coming around and testing the waters and seeing who they think is their best shot to lead Canada, and it's falling on Mark. But again, we're not leaving anything up to chance. This is very much what we're seeing publicly is an air game. And in politics, especially leadership, it's a ground game. So it's about winning ridings. It's about convincing Liberals that you're the right person. And that's very much up for grabs still. Organizational teams are ones that need to be built from the ground up and not from op-eds or whatever show you happen to go on. And I don't think any team has been 100% up until the last couple of days. So that's still to see. And we actually have to build something for the next election and not just winning a leadership race.
I would ask, just based on what you said you just made up your mind about a week ago. What was holding you up in terms of who you decided to endorse?
I've my own personal reasons for waiting till Monday was I wanted to make sure the membership was front and center to this. For people who aren't necessarily fully tuned into this, people were recruiting members of the Liberal Party up till yesterday at 5 p.m. I wanted to make sure that the priority was on members and people talking to members and not endorsements. That was my own personal ethics. Other people decided to go out and endorse them before and perhaps influence the membership. I felt it was important for that to happen organically. I was also just sort of taking my time as, they digested the resignation of the Prime Minister, and then coming to my own conclusion that now is the time to support him. So it really was a Saturday, Sunday night, and then Monday morning endorsement that I figured out.
It's funny because, as I said, I think of those who have endorsed him as well, high-profile ministers within Justin Trudeau's cabinet. And then it was interesting, Chrystia Freeland, I guess this would have been end of last week, tweeting out Mark Carney suggesting that it was, her words, the Ottawa establishment behind him, which when you look at it, it's funny, first of all, that Chrystia Freeland would say the Ottawa establishment when she, of course, has been a minister by Justin Trudeau's side for the last 10 years. But then you look at the names, and in a sense, it is the Ottawa establishment. Does that help or hurt, do you think, necessarily for someone like him?
Yeah, I've never been in a cabinet meeting with Mark Carney. And I think that sort of talk is a bit silly. The focus needs to be on Liberals and on Canadians. I'm feeling a buzz in and around Mark Carney's campaign. I think it's real. Is it ephemeral? I don't know. I think we need to maintain that momentum. Heaven knows we haven't had much momentum as a Liberal Party over the last 4 months, and I think we've been largely doing it to ourselves. That's fair to say, yeah. Well, with the infighting, I think that's well deserved. Mark Carney's a breath of fresh air. He may not appear to be from the outside, but he certainly has never been around the cabinet table with me before. I had the chance to go over and talk to him and have a good chat with him about what his priorities are and how they match with mine. Continued reforms on immigration, which I think are important to the future of the country. Reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, which has been a large priority of my cabinet files that I've had the honor of having. And he's largely on the same page, as well as his care for the environment. I think that is something that that I feel he's our best shot at beating Pierre Poilievre on, and I think that's why I decided to make that choice.
So let me ask a couple of things within the liberal framework here. We spent some time talking about today about Chandra Arya and this whole idea that he's basically been told, despite putting up his deposit and getting people to sign, we're not interested in having you run. What is this about? Because there was no official reason given by the party. Do you know?
I don't know the reasons for it. Certainly, from my perspective, he seemed to have a sort of callous disregard for the French language and, by extension, Quebecers. So I was very skeptical as to his candidacy. I've had interactions with him in caucus rather, not too many, but I actually don't know the reasons for why he was red lit.
I will tell you, the people who called and people were interested are like, why don't they just tell us why the reasons or what the reasons were? I think it was pretty obvious when Melanie Joly said, hey, I'm a French Canadian, you have to speak French. We're a bilingual party. We're the party of a bilingual Canada, but no reason specifically given. Is there likely to be a reason given?
I suspect it'll come out one way or another, Aaron, but I actually just don't know it at this time.
Let's talk immigration. One of the other candidates came out. I don't know if we have the clip here or not. I'm trying to remember now because I'm going to casually forget her name. Who's the other female running for leadership of the Liberal Party?
Ruby Dalla.
Ruby Dalla.
I think she's a former MP.
Okay. So did you hear what she had to say about immigration today?
I saw something on Twitter.
Well, you're going to hear it now. Do we have this? Okay, we're going to get this for you, and I want you to hear what she had to say. This is your file. And to have someone from within the party suggest this, I'm sure you'll have a reaction to this. Take a listen to this.
There are over 500,000 illegal immigrants in Canada. This is unacceptable. As the daughter of immigrant parents, I know firsthand that immigrants have helped build our great country. But we must clamp down on human trafficking and those that are here illegally. As your Prime Minister, I promise you, I will deport every illegal immigrant in Canada. Canada's comeback starts now.
If I didn't know better, I thought she's running on the Trump ticket. So what do you make of that? That's someone within the Liberal Party wants to be leader of the party.
I mean, it sounds like something we're hearing from our friends in the South. Look, there are people that come regularly to this country. They've done so over decades, and some would argue centuries. There are a number of people that, for a lot of reasons, perhaps should be Canadians, but aren't. Their papers aren't in order. To paint them with the same brush, I think, betrays something that I think is unfortunate in that person's heart. But again, I think this is being done for political reasons to whip anti-immigrant sentiment up. And the problem with this type of rhetoric is that it paints all types of immigrants, whether they're here regularly or whether they've just arrived. Some perhaps have an accent, look different than me. And I think it's unfortunate because it creates that license to pick on immigrants. People that are here and have come in an irregular fashion should not do so. To the extent you've been here for a long period of time, have integrated, have kids here, I think it would sort of be heartless to, in one fell swoop, say, get out of this country. I think that's a lot of the anguish that we're hearing in the U.S. It is true at the same time that if you're going to have a robust immigration system, there needs to be the ability to deport people that are not entitled to be here in this country. And indeed, we've deported a large number of people over the last years, but those are people who have had due process, that have been adjudicated properly and are not entitled to stay here. And in order to have a robust immigration system, you have to be able to have consequences that attach to it. And that means removing people. And sometimes it's voluntary, and sometimes we have to actually send people abroad. And that's happening. Perhaps people say not fast enough, but certainly the Canada Border Service Agency over the last year and over my tenure has been quite diligent in removing people that aren't entitled to be here. But to talk about people in the millions and to speculate like that, I think is highly careless. And I think everyone sees what's going on in that type of rhetoric.
I'm not sure if I read or not that, with respect to people who are here, and we've been asking them voluntarily, right, to some degree, if you're not here legally, please, you should be leaving the country, right? But there are fewer and fewer people working within the government immigration to process those kinds of files, or they're not. So, I mean, you're handcuffed in a sense, are you not?
Yeah, look, the removals of people is done by the Canada Border Service agencies, so by public safety. The recent cuts that I put through the immigration system are ones that are the result of its large growth over the last 4 or 5 years, and it brings us back down to 2019 or in and around pre-pandemic levels. They made sense because we have a number of programs that are sunsetting. The welcoming of Ukrainians, for example, the welcome of Afghanis, and a lot of people that are on term contracts and people that were not necessarily entitled to continue anyway. So there were some reductions that were important to be made as a result of the reduction of the permanent immigration levels, and making sure that we have a civil service that is commensurate with the tasks that are ascribed to it as part of the immigration system. So those recent cuts, I think, are important. They will not affect processing times. And a lot of the people that are not being asked to continue are people that were on term contracts, or people that will perhaps age out or go into other departments. But they are difficult decisions to be made because there's an individual behind each firing or each contract that comes to an end. But it is responsible, and I do bear the ultimate responsibility at the end of the day for the size of the department that I manage. I
also read this the other week. We have universities now, because of what's happened with respect to students who are in this country, and now by virtue of the new rules that are in place, I'm not sure which university it was, saying they're now going to lose $20 or $30 million, have to cut programs, have to cut staff just because of this. It's kind of like come back to bite you in the backside, in a sense, for trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, when it comes to international students that have come in large amounts over the last few years, it's been clear to me that colleges and universities have taken advantage of an ecosystem of unlimited supply, and it's focused more on quantity than quality. And what the reforms that I put into place were extremely important, and it's reduced the number of visas that have been issued by like 35 to 45% if you trust the statistics that are coming in and are still fresh. But they were important, and they do have an impact on the financing of universities. But the universities and colleges also have the responsibility to make sure that they're using the funds that they're getting from these folks wisely, and are going out and recruiting the right type of student to come to Canada. We have a world-class education system. A lot of the people coming to Canada were not necessarily coming in for the education, but for the prospect of permanent residency and citizenship. So this wasn't a backdoor way of becoming a Canadian citizen. Making sure that hope matches what the reality is part of my job, Aaron. And again, as the federal government, my job is not to finance universities and colleges. There's a big discussion to be had in this country about how universities, colleges get funded, and the historic underfunding that provinces have been doing towards them. And it's unfair to an education system that does brag about being one of the top in the world, and still is. But it's something that has to be done responsibly, and not on the backs of international students that pay 4 times what my kids pay.
The very latest news, reported and discussed. Welcome back to Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
We are in conversation with Federal Immigration Minister Marc Miller, talking about a lot of things. Immigration's your bailiwick, so you need to know, of course, today that for whatever reason, first of all, the National Assembly began, of course, after the winter break, first session today. Jean-François Roberge, who's a language minister, came out and talked about the government now wanting to introduce this new policy where immigrants coming to Quebec would, I don't want to use the word forced, would be encouraged to better assimilate or become, more attached to Quebec culture and values. Now, I want you to hear the question, because the first question was, why do we need this? We already have Bills 21 and Bill 96, which lay out basically, the issues that we deal with here in Quebec that are unique to Quebec. But then this question came up.
There's a lot of people, I assume, that don't understand this definition of multiculturalism. So can you explain just what exactly are you trying to change?
Well, I've read the Multiculturalist Politic, which have been made in 1971. I've read the bill. There's nothing about a common culture. There's nothing about common languages. So this is a huge difference. We are saying that we exist as a nation. And we want to continue to do so. And we want people to understand where they arrive, to understand that there is a nation here, a Quebec's nation. There is a language here. There is a culture. There are some identity, and they are welcome here. But they must embrace this culture and then contribute.
They must embrace this culture and contribute. So what do you make of this?
We'll have to see what they're talking about. It's not beneath the CAC, as you know, to play identity politics and get reelected.
That's a surprise, yeah. Okay.
People that come to Canada are expected to embrace the nation. They swear an oath. I do citizenship ceremonies. I'm doing one on Friday, and it's the happiest time because people are waving the flag. They've passed an exam, a citizenship test that teaches them about the Charter, teaches about Canadian rights and values. If you ever go to Pier 21 in Halifax, the Immigration Museum, the person touring you around will tell you how many prime ministers have done relatively poorly on the citizenship test and couldn't name. I mean, it's good to know. Okay. I would not want to say this publicly, but they didn't get the higher scores than the immigrants. But it's not beneath the CAC to play identity politics. This is perhaps...
but let me ask this, because one of the things that came up was this idea of multiculturalism versus interculturalism, as if there's a wedge between the two. What's the difference?
I don't know what they're talking about, honestly. If you go back to Camille Lorrain, the godfather of Bill 101's white paper, he clearly spelled out the importance of respecting the common language, which is obviously French in Quebec. If you look at the course of the English community in Quebec, there's been a wide integration and learning of French in the 30 years since I went to school. Camille Lorrain also said immigrants are integral to this project that is the Quebec nation, and it's important to respect their cultures and values and learn French. And this is largely what they do. It's best learned on the benches of the classrooms. I think what the CAC has done, for example, in refusing access to the kids of asylum seekers to daycare, goes against integration and against the building of a beautiful nation within Canada. So I think it's virtue signaling. God knows we've been accused of virtue signaling, and this is certainly something that I see with some skepticism. But let's see what they're proposing, and let's remember how the CAC gets elected and reelected.
I think we have chatted before as well, and I think you've admitted that with respect to immigration numbers, how the federal government has handled this, has not been stellar. Let's use that word. With respect to Mark Carney going forward, because this is going to have to be one of the things that he talks about, what's his plan? Have you talked about immigration with him?
We did, and we talked about the reforms that I put into place over the last year and a half as I've been the immigration minister. Immigrants are integral to the economy of Canada, particularly in a more global perspective of declining aging of the population. The reforms that we've made as a government, whether you like them or not, have made the workforce younger. That's undeniable. The Bank of Canada has said so. The IMF has said so. It's come with some challenges. The impact of the large volume on elements of affordability, not the sole cause, as some people would say, including the Premier. But they've had an impact. The reforms to tailor this and to taper it over the last year and a half, I think, are very important, particularly when it comes to international students and temporary residents. But they have to be done with dignity and humanity and without accusing immigrants of all sorts of ills, because they're so important to the wealth that we have as a nation in Canada, and we need to respect them. But there are limits to Canada's capacity to accept people and the volumes that we've been doing, and that's just reality. But we can't demonize them, and I think that's kind of the debate that we're in. I don't want to use them as a political and electoral wedge, but it's no doubt that immigration will be a top issue over the next campaign. It certainly has been in the prior ones. And Mark Carney has seen the importance, and economists do this, and it's sort of misunderstood at times, but they do look at the increase in the population and its impact on the economy, the impact on the setting of rates by the Bank of Canada, which is so important to the mortgages that we all have. And the tapering of that population that we've done as a part of my reforms is really important, and Mark Carney's behind that. I think he believes in responsible immigration, and I certainly do. And I needed that satisfaction before I put my weight behind him.
We're out of time. I wish we had more time. I thank you so much for coming by.
Yeah, anytime, Eric.
It's always good to see you.